How's that dinner conversation?
I'm married to a triple boarded radiologist, so I'm not even the best hands at the dinner table. So I will say she's been incredibly supportive since day one. It astonishes me to think about it.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be listening. I'm Nate Benson, Digital Media Manager here at 43 North, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. Hope you are all enjoying your weekend, whenever you're listening. I hope you're enjoying that time. This week on the podcast, we're talking about Circuit Clinical, and I know nothing about anything clinical. I haven't been to the doctor in like 7 years, so I'm going to lead it to the expert. Who are you?
Dr. Irfan Khan. I'm founder and chief strategy officer for Circuit.
How are you doing today?
Good, Nate. How you doing?
Good. Tell me a little bit about what Circuit Clinical is.
Yep, absolutely. So at our heart, we're a company that believes that patients should get access to clinical research opportunities right where they get their health care, so in their own doctor's office. So what we've done is built a network of physicians who feel the same way and empowered them to do research with a team of experts and software that simplifies the process.
One of the things, I always see and I don't read many medical journals, but every once in a while you'll see an NBC News story or BBC News story about some radical treatment being made for cancer or for whatever the case may be, and people go, oh, I want to try that, but I have no idea how. Is that something similar to basically trying to streamline the process of clinical trials and clinical training? It's
absolutely spot on. It's hard for people to find studies. It's hard to find out when you get a diagnosis or somebody you care about gets a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. It's hard for them to figure out what the pathway is to finding the latest and greatest in American research. So that needs to change. And the way it should change, the place people want to have that conversation is with their doctor. So that's really what the idea is engage more physicians who want to have those conversations with their patients and empower them with the information that they need to be successful.
Because the archaic way was you would just kind of go out on your own and you heard about something and sought it out yourself and really didn't have much guidance from your physician who you should see regularly, correct?
Absolutely. And even with the power of the internet, it's still a difficult process. If you were to Google cardiovascular disease, you'll get actually a panel that shows you what's going on in the latest thinking from the academic centers. But if you Google cardiovascular research, you don't. You tend to get single sites and places that are putting on a specific study, but that doesn't help you understand, is that the right study for you? So there's a utility in having that conversation with your own physician.
Unfortunately, the thing about the internet is obviously everyone's an expert on the internet, from what I understand.
After a 15-year career in medicine, I can nod my head knowingly. Yes, that's true.
So how is Circuit Clinical doing this? Tell me a little bit about the development. Why are you doing this, and tell me a little bit about the platform, so to speak.
Sure. So we got started back in 2014. I was a practicing cardiac electrophysiologist over here at South Buffalo Mercy. So I was putting in pacemakers. And
okay, I was going to say in plain English.
Yeah. It's real simple. Putting in pacemakers and burning out short circuits when people's hearts race. And it's a lot of fun. Great medicine. Great hospital. And I did a lot of clinical research in that space too. And what you see is that it's hard to get studies done because the most doctors don't participate in clinical research, not because they're not interested, but just because it's tough to do from an infrastructure point of view. So that was the beginning of the idea that we could make it simpler, and then we could bring many, many more doctors into the process. And that brings many more patients.
So how are you guys doing this now?
So, yeah, we're doing great. Western New York's been great to us. It's home. We had an opportunity to move the company back in 2014, and we're extremely grateful we didn't. And what's happened as a result is that we have partnerships with many large physician groups around town. We have partnerships with Catholic Medical Partners, Optimum Physician Alliance. So all of the various associations that are focused on the health of patients in Western New York also believe that clinical research is a care option for their patients. So it's been great.
One of the things that, innovation in life sciences is kind of one of the fundamental pillars here in Western New York.
Absolutely.
But institutions, the larger ones are sometimes a little bit slower to react to a new technology or a new method of doing something because you're just not sure if it's going to be around in 2, 3, 4, 5 years by the time they're able to implement it. So how do you guys answer those challenges?
Yeah, part of it is having been able to be credible in the space from the beginning. Part of that is that we have a lot of expertise. Lisa Wishart, who's our senior research coordinator, she comes with a wealth of clinical research expertise. Erin Brackenridge, who runs our physician network development, she comes out of Catholic Medical Partners with a long set of relationships in the space. So part of it is that the people on our team are deeply experienced in really know Western New York. They're from here. They understand it. They understand the companies that are trying to create value here. And so part of it is just building up institutional trust. That was tougher in 2014 when we got started. It's very straightforward now because people are aware of what we're trying to do and they support it.
You mentioned earlier you had an opportunity to move pretty much all the way across the country to Denver, from what I've understood in my research. You stayed here. Talk a little bit about why you made that decision to kind of buy into Buffalo. So
Absolutely. So Western New York is home. I'm up in Clarence, and we got kids in school here, and so we care a lot about the people of Western New York as a company. We do because we're all from here. But it is true that Denver has a very sophisticated biotechnology community, and early investors in us and real believers in us from the team that created Health Grades had suggested we relocate there where there'd be a waiting audience essentially for our services. And we were looking very seriously at that. I was actually looking at houses, and a couple of things happened at the same time. One is we got into Startup New York, which is a great program, and it was the beginning of really rethinking about where does this company grow, how does it achieve itself and its potential. And the next thing that happened was, all kidding aside, we got into the 43 North semifinals, and it was a really clear signal that Western New York wanted to support a company like ours. And it was actually our Denver team saw all this and said, you know what? You are in a really supportive environment right now, and that's a great place to be when you're a young company. And so they were really understanding about our desire to be here long term, and that's when we made the decision to sort of stay and go the route down here, and it's been great to us ever since.
Now, you didn't make it all the way through to the final 8 winners that year at 43 North, but you kind of saw kind of the after effect, the little bit of, benefit, so to speak, afterwards of, being able to kind of at least attach your name a little bit, say, hey, we got,
Absolutely.
It's obviously a credible idea. These guys thought so. And bring that towards investors, correct?
43 North was great for us. So to any of the innovators out there thinking about the competition and looking at the application, which can be a little bit daunting at the beginning, it's well worth it, because the process of formalizing your thinking and going through the application process and then making the semis absolutely was a credibility builder for us right while we were executing a raise. And so what happened was a bunch of great things happened at the same time. We got into Startup New York. We moved into the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus down at the UB Downtown Gateway, and we made the semifinals. And it's true, we didn't make the finals, but we closed our raise, and it was absolutely a part of that story in terms of this is a company that is going places and getting things accomplished. So I encourage everybody to apply because it's a great competition.
And since then, you've moved out of Gateway, and you have your own space now right on Delaware Avenue.
We do. We're part of the Delaware Renaissance, 599. It's looking great, just around the corner from, walking up on Allen Street, and welcome anybody to come by and take a look. It's been terrific for us. That is actually, so that's a Schneider development building. Mm-hmm. So our partners at 15 are upstairs from us, Zach Schneider and Greg Neerdorfer's ad agency. And so it's been great because they're partners with us. We do a bunch of stuff in the patient recruitment space together, and we have this great collaboration inside one building, and we can really grow into that space. It's a
great space for all the history buffs. It's right down the street from the former White House, where Teddy Roosevelt was inaugurated.
Absolutely.
During the McKinley kerfuffle back at the Pan Am Expo. So briefly it was the White House, but obviously the inauguration site as well.
Somebody told me that the Canisius parking lot hosts the scene where he died or something like that.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
fascinating.
It's insane. Yeah, and the great thing, not to derail entrepreneurship talk, but what I love about the Pan Am Expo is it was all built to be torn apart. Like it was this grandiose limestone structures, and they built it just to tear it down. It was fascinating.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Exactly. So, I always like to ask, kind of the founders and the early folks in a startup, why get involved with a startup? Obviously, you had a career in cardiology, installing pacemakers and people who critically needed them. You could have rode that wave into the sunset, had a perhaps a less risky life, financially and for your family, because startup life is a struggle. We all know that. Talk about why do the startup grind, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll start by saying this that I've been fortunate enough to be on a few interesting adventures. Between doing my general medicine residency, cardiology, and then doing electrophysiology. And this is by far the most challenging, interesting, fun thing I've done. And it isn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's clearly justified the commitment over the last couple of years. I'm surrounded by amazing people doing it. And so for me, I think it came down to the fact that I was successful and I think competent at the work I did. I loved the hospital, loved the patients. I had great partners in my medical group. So, no dissatisfactions at all. It just came down to the idea that I perceived a problem that was important, which is it's tough to bring new medicines to market. and the system, the way we're doing it over and over again, keeps producing the same results. And I thought there was an opportunity through software and through really developing an expert team to change that equation, not just for the people of Western Europe, but certainly here first, and then with a solution that would be useful around the country. And so once that idea took hold, it really became a passion, and I thought it was something worth trying to go ahead and do.
Was there an aha moment when you kind of realized, okay, this is a problem, and I think I've got an answer? Because I think I have the answers to a lot of problems, but it turns out my problems have been answered decades ago.
Well, I will say this, that there was a moment or two when I was sitting in my cases, doing cases, and then taking phone calls between cases, where it felt like, everything we're hearing from the people we talk to in the pharmaceutical industry, everything we hear about when we talk to large physician groups, they're all asking for us to move faster and get out there sooner so we can partner on these sorts of things. And it did finally dawn on me that there does seem to be enough need on both sides. The patients and the physicians want access to it. The sponsors in the pharmaceutical industry would like there to be new solutions to bringing medicines to market. And that was the aha experience. That was we do have the potential to grow into something big.
I'm always curious to kind of get insight on how those conversations go when you have that aha moment and then you go to the family or your friends and go, hey, I'm a successful doctor. I want to say, you know what? Let's take a throat in reverse and turn left and see what happens. Like, can you provide a little insight on just?
Oh yeah.
And how's that dinner conversation?
I'm married to a triple boarded radiologist, so I'm not even the best hands at the dinner table. So I will say she's been incredibly supportive since day one. It astonishes me to think about it because it's a difficult thing to do. No matter how great the company is, no matter how great the team is. Building things, making things from 0 to 1 is really complicated. Nobody does it by themselves. You need a group of really amazing people. I'm lucky. I have a deeply experienced management team, a terrific CEO, a terrific CTO. And even then, it's still really hard. Like, it's really hard. So you need that support at home, and I have to say I'm pretty amazed. Uzma, if you're listening, I'm very appreciative. So yeah. But yes, most of my physician friends at some point or another have asked me if I'm losing my mind. But nowadays, with where we've gotten, everyone is like, "This is really cool, and I'm glad you're doing it."
Yeah, and they're able to see the progression. You went from a couple employees at Gateway, and now you're in space, dozens of employees, and you're on track to, if I read correctly, to keep expanding, correct?
So we just announced last week we were invited. It was a watershed week for us as a company. We were invited, one of 20 companies invited around the country to Pfizer's innovation conference.
Small company, yeah.
Yeah, a tiny little, poor, pharmaceutical startup. I have a good feeling about them. So Pfizer invited us and 20 other companies to kind of tell our story and how we're innovating in the space. So that was a real honor. And at that conference, we were able to announce a partnership we're doing with Austin-based ePatient Finder. So that takes our network, which is currently sitting around 1 million patients that we can directly touch. It takes it to more than triples it. Wow. And it really combines two complementary services. So it's a huge change in the way clinical research opportunities are brought to patients. And it's been picked up by the national press. I just finished an interview this morning with Center Watch, which is the big publication. It's the website that everyone goes to see what's happening in the clinical research industry. So that'll be coming out on Monday. And it's just great to see that we've achieved a level of recognition that we are innovating in our industry.
And I think being able to be recognized, like a company like Pfizer, identify like, hey, it's a game-changing technology, all from kind of just an aha moment, back when you're doing case studies, right?
It's pretty neat. And what's cool about it, too, is that when people find out we're from Buffalo, they ask a lot about, why Buffalo? Like, how did you end up here? And then we start telling them everything that's happening in the life sciences economy over here. I have literally sent people links to 43 North who are they're doing small biotech startups. And I'm like, you want to take a look at this because this is the place to be if you're trying to create innovation in life sciences or technology. This is the place in the United States where that whole economy is geared around it. And so it's been fun. I think some good things are going to come out of that last conference that we should see in the early part of next year that'll be focused on Western New York.
So what's next for you guys? Obviously, is it more partnerships, more staff? Can you give us a little bit of a roadmap what the next year looks like for you guys?
Yep, absolutely. So we think we can take what we've learned here in Western New York and offer it up to New York State as a whole. That's a real passion of mine, is that I think that if you look across the country, New York is third in population and is fourth, actually, in amount of revenue received for doing clinical research. Now, New York City and Long Island, they do great. But upstate, central New York, western New York, we're really underserved. And New York is fourth behind Florida in dollars spent by $1.5 billion even though the populations are roughly the same size. So there's an opportunity to create the infrastructure in New York State to do exactly what Circuit's done in Western New York and bring it to the rest of the state, and then create new jobs and new opportunities and really new revenue coming in from around the country from the rest of these companies who want to get research done just by offering it to the patients right where they're comfortable getting their health care.
So how can patients today, any potential patients who are hearing the podcast, if they want to utilize your guys' service, how do they do that?
The fastest, simplest way is to visit our website, and there's a contact us there, and we're happy to have those conversations. If somebody has gotten a diagnosis and you're wondering, is there anything in clinical research that's available, or if it's you yourself and you're curious about that, we'd love to hear from you, and we'll get right back in touch with you. We think that in the year ahead, we'll have a set of solutions that will really simplify the process of being able to match a patient to a study, and most importantly, ideally, deliver it to them right where they get their health care.
In kind of broader sense, newer technologies in the life sciences, biosciences field, like I said earlier, can sometimes be a long roadmap. How do you get over those hurdles? How do startups get over those hurdles? And because it's not easy in the beginning, there's those hills and valleys of startup life, and there's cash flow problems and resource problems. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about your background, how you guys were able to adapt, pivot, things like that?
Sure. So our startup grind has been no different than any of the great companies we see at 43 North kind of going through this process. It's there's a chunk of it where it's bootstrapping. There's a chunk of it where it's team building. There's a lot of self-sacrifice from the management team, and most importantly from our great team of employees have really worked as incredibly hard as they can to build it. So that's a big chunk of it. And then part of it is being able to see how do you book a win for your partners. And so I think that's something that Circuit's been really good at, is really asking itself, what is it our physician partners are trying to accomplish, and how do we help them be successful in the eyes of their patients, and what are our patients trying to accomplish in clinical research, and how do we optimize for their experience? So part of it is being service-oriented, which a lot of companies really say they are and try to focus on. We take it pretty seriously. I think part of it is value-focused. Are we creating value for our pharmaceutical sponsors? Are we creating value for our physicians? Are we creating value for our hospital systems? I think that's what our success has come from, really focusing on that part of the equation.
How have hospital systems reacted? I know you're continuing to develop partnerships, things like that. Obviously, there's going to be more of that in the year to come. But what's the reactions been to what you guys are doing, based from a system standpoint?
Strongly positive, and it's been really heartening. It's because I think as we transition as a healthcare economy from fee for service, in other words, getting paid to do things, to value-based care, which is getting paid to impact meaningfully people's health. I think that the hospital systems themselves, the leadership has been great all across Western New York. With every system we talk to, the leadership clearly understands that clinical research should be a care option for their patients. And so there's this willingness to engage and say, how can we take what Circuit's offering, which is a facilitated opportunity to participate in research, and deliver it to our patients? So far so good. I think it's a credit to the team that we have, and I think it's a credit to the leadership that the health systems around the Western New York has.
Leadership in newer startups is so key. When the company was founded, was it identified early on that you need a strong CEO and a strong management team? That because a lot of founders think, oh, I can do CEO and I can be CTO and CIO and all the whatever other acronym you can think of. But I've found in I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy with a podcast. But the people who I kind of deem successful are the ones who have a game-changing idea, but also understand that they might not be the best CEO.
Absolutely.
What's your feedback on that?
I think you said it exactly right. I think that while it's important to believe in whatever that vision you have to change things is, because that belief will sustain you when things are tough, and things absolutely get tough along the way. I think even more important than that is this willingness to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. So, and I can't claim any great credit to Self-Insight, but I am surrounded by people both older and smarter than me in various combinations, and that helps a lot. So RJ Staple, my co-founder and business partner and friend for more than a decade, who's a seasoned senior lawyer in Western New York, has seen it all, done it all in business, was instrumental in helping me understand the utility of getting a great CEO. And I look at Jim Pappanow, our CEO. His presence in the company is a true blessing, because here's a guy who scaled his last company to 500 employees, had a huge exit, he truly is, been at the helm for some really amazing situations and cared enough about this mission to be on it at a time when he didn't need to be. And so when you get a guy like that leading, it's very easy to get behind and to create some great things together. And then Jim was able to assemble a really terrific management team. Our CFO, Steve Linke, is a guy who's done 10 years at KPMG. Our CTO is Dave Hicks, who was the co-founder of Health Grades. So you look at that, and you're just blown away by the people you come to work with, and it inspires you actually to dig in and do your part.
All right, so in about a year or so from now, we'll check in with you again and see how, hopefully you've tripled your staff and your big
global
things to come.
domination. Exactly, absolutely. That
They'll
sounds
rename
great.
the arena after Circuit Clinical. One can hope.
That's 2020.
That's 2020. Great 3-year plan. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Again, if people want to get engaged with clinical trials through Circuit, what can they do?
Yeah, www.circuitclinical.com is our website. That's the simplest, fastest way. There's a contact us button, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, and we'll check in with you again.
Thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
Bye.